The Invictus's coilgun batteries ripped through the Denobulan Museum shields like rifle rounds through paper, shattering 5,000 years of stasis with explosive fury. Laros hit the deck as the UTS Invictus shuddered, ancient life support suddenly thrumming through the human warship's hull. Emergency lights flickered on. The Denobulan historian gaped at the impossible, a museum relic, roaring to life. His students screamed. Laros had just been lecturing on humanity's extinction. He gestured to the Invictus's rusted husk, thick titanium plates pitted from unknown battles, the emblem of a blue marble with a golden wreath faded on the prow. A primitive, barbaric design, dreadful and dead like its creators, or so he thought. A klaxon jolted him back to crisis. Laros scrambled to the observation deck's comm panel. "This is Curator Laros. We need—" "This is Commander Valen, Sector Defense. Laros, shut down whatever you're doing in there. Unknown hostiles just warped into the system, and their first salvo took out our shields. I don't know what you did, but that Terran wreck is powering up, and it's giving off more energy than our whole damn station." Laros blanched, looking back at the Invictus's hull now humming with eldritch power. His suit's HUD flashed warnings, radiation levels climbing, power spikes, atmosphere venting in the maintenance bay. The implications crashed into him. 50 ships, enough firepower to glass a planet. Closing fast, and their only hope was a 5,000-year-old human antique that had more in common with a seafaring battering ram than a modern warship. They were doomed. A guttural growl thundered through the museum, the Invictus's engines waking from millennia of slumber. Laros watched in awe as viewports along the ship's flank started to glow a baleful red. Weapon batteries twitched and whirred, seeking targets. The comm chimed again, laced with panic. "Laros, I don't know how, but you've got to get that thing to—" Static. The line went dead. The acrid stench of ozone filled the air as the smoke from the initial salvo dissipated. Laros blinked, his eyes adjusting to the flickering emergency lights. He froze as he saw a group of heavily armed aliens stride through the gaping hole in the museum's hull. Their armor was a deep crimson, adorned with vicious spikes and pulsing with an eerie green energy. The leader of the boarding party stepped forward, his scarred face twisting into a sneer. "I am Commander Zaxxon of the Zorgon Empire," he growled, his voice dripping with malice. "Surrender the artifacts, especially that human ship, or face the consequences." Laros stepped in front of his terrified students, his heart pounding. I cannot do that. These relics are priceless. They belong to the Denobulan people." Zaxxon's single eye narrowed. "Then you choose death." He raised his weapon, a wicked-looking plasma rifle, and fired. Laros dove for cover behind the Invictus's hull as the Zorgon troops opened fire. Energy blasts scorched the air, leaving molten holes in the deck. The students screamed, huddling behind the massive Dreadnought. In the chaos, a stray shot hit the Invictus's airlock. With a hiss of escaping atmosphere, the ancient door groaned open. Laros saw his chance. "Everyone inside now," he shouted, herding the students through the airlock. They stumbled into the Invictus's dark interior, the ship's emergency lights casting an eerie red glow. As Laros sealed the airlock, he heard the ship's systems start to hum with power. Consoles flickered to life, displays showing incomprehensible human text. "Professor, look!" Zorax, a bright-eyed 12-year-old, pointed at a schematic on a nearby screen. "I think these are the weapon controls." Laros stared at the boy, amazed. Zorax's fingers flew over the console, and deep within the ship something stirred. Outside, Zaxxon and his troops continued to blast away at the Invictus's hull. The ship shuddered under the onslaught, but its ancient armor held strong. Laros watched in awe as Zorax brought the Invictus's weapons online. He realized that this was no mere museum piece. The humans had left their warship ready for war, even after centuries of slumber. As the Zorgons prepared for another assault, Laros made a decision that would change the course of Denobulan history. He placed his hand on Zorax's shoulder. "Fire!" A deep rumbling voice echoed through the Invictus's bridge. "Greetings, Curator Laros. I am Aegis, the Invictus's artificial intelligence. How may I assist you? Laros gaped at the holographic display, which now showed a glowing blue orb pulsing with energy. Aegis, you're operational. Affirmative. My primary function is to aid the crew in operating this vessel and defending against threats. I have been dormant for approximately 5,127 years, but my systems are now fully online. Zorax's eyes widened. Wow, a real AI. Can you help us fight the Zorgons? Of course, young one. I have already analyzed their fleet composition and identified potential weaknesses. I suggest we target their flagship first to disrupt their chain of command. Laros nodded, determination etched on his face. Aegis, can you guide us out of the docking bay? We need to engage the Zorgons before they destroy the station. Certainly, Curator. Please take your positions at the helm and weapon control stations. I will handle navigation and system optimization. Laros and Zorax manned their consoles as the Invictus's engines roared to life. The Dreadnought, an ancient titan of war reborn, tore free from the museum's embrace and surged into the void. The Zorgon ships, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of the human vessel, scrambled to reorient themselves. Aegis's calm voice guided Laros's actions. Curator, I recommend targeting the lead destroyer with our forward kinetic cannons. Their shields are weakest at the aft section. Laros gritted his teeth and fired. The Invictus's oversized cannons, designed to punch through the toughest armor, spat hell and fury at the Zorgon ship. Molten metal and debris erupted from the destroyer's hull as the rounds found their mark. Direct hit. Enemy destroyer's shields are down to 23%, preparing for another salvo. As the battle raged, Laros and the students worked frantically to keep the Invictus in the fight. Aegis proved invaluable, its advanced algorithms and lightning-fast calculations giving them a critical edge against the more numerous Zorgon forces. In a brief lull, Zorax spoke up. Aegis, what happened to the humans? Why did they disappear? The AI's voice took on a somber tone. The records are fragmented, but from what I can gather, humanity faced an existential threat in the form of an unknown adversary. They created the Invictus and its sister ships as a last resort to preserve their knowledge and protect the galaxy in their absence. Laros felt a chill run down his spine. The implications were staggering. The Invictus was more than a warship. It was a testament to humanity's sacrifice and a guardian of their legacy. The Zorgons, their fleet battered and bruised, made one final desperate gambit. The ZSS Conqueror, Zaxxon's flagship, surged forward on a collision course with the Invictus. Aegis's voice rang out in alarm. Curator, the Conqueror is attempting a ramming maneuver. I suggest an evasive pattern. Laros gripped the helm, his knuckles white. With Aegis's guidance, he wrenched the Invictus into a sharp turn, narrowly avoiding the Conqueror's prow. The Zorgon flagship, unable to correct its course, ploughed into another destroyer, both ships erupting into a massive fireball. The Invictus shuddered as the shockwave buffeted its hull. Laros watched in awe as the Zorgon fleet, demoralized by the loss of their leader and their ships, began to retreat. For a moment, they had a respite, a chance to catch their breath. But Laros knew that this was only the beginning. The Invictus had revealed itself, and its power would not go unnoticed. They had won the battle, but the war for the galaxy's future was just beginning. Laros seized the moment, his voice ringing out across the Invictus's bridge. Aegis, target the Overlord, hit it with everything we've got. The AI's response was immediate. Acknowledged. Targeting the ZSS Overlord, firing kinetic rounds and missiles. The Invictus shuddered as its weapons roared to life. Streams of tracer rounds and contrails streaked across the void, slamming into the Zorgon flagship's shields. The barrier held for a moment, then flickered and died under the onslaught. Explosions blossomed along the Overlord's hull as the Invictus's rounds found their mark. Armor plating shattered, atmosphere venting into space. The Dreadnought listed, engines sputtering, careening out of control. The Zorgon fleet, seeing their flagship crippled, fell into disarray. Smaller ships broke formation, fleeing the battle. But the Invictus had not emerged unscathed. Alarms blared, red light bathing the bridge. Zorax's eyes widened as he scanned the damage reports. "Professor, the main reactor is overheating. Shields are down to 12%. We can't take much more of this." Laros gripped the console, his mind racing. They had to end this now. "Aegis options?" The AI's voice was calm but urgent. "Curator, the Invictus is equipped with an experimental weapon, the Singularity Cannon. It creates a localized black hole that can tear through enemy ships and disrupt their systems." Laros's breath caught. A black hole weapon? The implications were staggering. Can it end this fight? "Affirmative, but what, Aegis?" "Firing the Singularity Cannon could destabilize our reactor core. The potential for a catastrophic explosion is high." Laros closed his eyes, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. "Use the weapon and risk the lives of everyone on the Invictus. Don't use it and let the Zorgons regroup, dooming the station and countless Denobulan lives." He looked at the students huddled at their stations, fear etched on their faces. Zorax met his gaze, a flicker of trust in his eyes. Laros straightened, his jaw set. He had to... "Curator, new contacts emerging from hyperspace." Aegis's voice cut through his thoughts. On the view screen, a fleet of sleek silver ships burst into real space, energy crackling along their hulls. They bore markings similar to the Invictus, but their design was even more advanced. The newcomers wasted no time, diving into the fray with ruthless precision. Beams of searing light lanced out, spearing Zorgon ships. The enemy fleet, already in disarray, crumbled under the onslaught. Laros watched in awe as the last Zorgon ship exploded, reduced to a cloud of molten debris. The Invictus's bridge was silent, save for the hum of damaged systems. A chime, and a man's face appeared on the view screen. Steely eyes, grey hair cropped short, a uniform bearing the same insignia as the Invictus. "This is Admiral John Harrington of the United Earth Fleet. Invictus, do you read?" Laros found his voice. "This is Curator Laros of the Denobulan Museum. Admiral, I thought humanity was extinct." Harrington smiled, a glint in his eye. "Reports of our demise have been greatly exaggerated. We didn't disappear, Curator. We retreated to rebuild and prepare for the day when we would be needed again." He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "And it seems that day has come. We have much to discuss, Curator. The galaxy is changing, and humanity is ready to take its place as defenders of the innocent once more." Laros stood on the Invictus's bridge, his eyes wide as Admiral Harrington's face filled the view screen. The human's words echoed in his mind. Humanity, alive and thriving, ready to defend the galaxy once more. "Curator Laros, with your permission, we'd like to send repair teams to assist with the Invictus and provide medical aid to your injured," Harrington said, his voice calm and assured. Laros nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "We would be grateful for any help you can provide, Admiral." As human ships maneuvered alongside the Invictus, sleek shuttles began ferrying repair crews and medics to the ancient Dreadnought. Laros watched in awe as the humans worked alongside Denobulan engineers, their advanced tools and expertise making short work of the damage. In the midst of the controlled chaos, Admiral Harrington invited Laros to his flagship, the UES Deliverance. As they walked through the gleaming corridors, Harrington began to share humanity's story. "After a series of devastating wars and conflicts, we realized that our presence in the galaxy was causing more harm than good," he explained, his eyes distant with memory. "We made the difficult decision to withdraw, to focus on our own growth and development." Laros listened intently, his mind reeling with the implications. "But why return now?" Harrington smiled, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "We never truly left, Curator. We've always been watching, ready to step in when needed. The Zorgon threat was too great to ignore." As they returned to the Invictus, Laros found himself marveling at the progress the repair teams had made. The once battered ship was coming back to life, its systems humming with renewed purpose. Admiral Harrington turned to Laros, his expression serious. "Curator, I'd like to extend an invitation to you and your students. Come to Earth, see our homeworld, and learn about our history and culture firsthand." Laros felt a thrill of excitement at the prospect. This was an opportunity he had never dared to imagine, a chance to bridge the gap between their species and forge a new understanding. "It would be an honor, Admiral," he said, his voice thick with emotion. As preparations began for their journey to Earth, tragedy struck without warning. A damaged power conduit on the Invictus exploded, sending shards of metal and sparks flying through the air. Laros heard the screams before he saw the damage. He raced through the corridors, his heart pounding until he reached the source of the commotion. There, lying motionless on the deck, was Zorax, the brilliant young student who had been so instrumental in their victory. Medics, both human and denobulan, rushed to the scene, their faces grim as they worked to stabilize the boy. Laros watched helplessly, tears streaming down his face as they fought to save Zorax's life. But despite their best efforts, it was too late. Zorax, the brave and clever child who had shown such promise, slipped away, his injuries too severe to overcome. Laros felt a hollow ache in his chest as he broke the news to the other students. Their sobs echoed through the Invictus's halls, a haunting reminder of the price they had paid for their survival. As the human fleet prepared to depart, the Invictus was towed back to the museum, a shell of its former glory. Laros stood on the observation deck, his eyes fixed on the stars as he tried to make sense of all that had happened. The encounter with the humans had changed everything. It had opened his eyes to the true nature of the galaxy, to the dangers and wonders that lay beyond their little corner of space. But it had also shown him the resilience and compassion of humanity, the strength that had allowed them to endure and prosper against all odds. As the human ships disappeared into the void, Laros felt a profound sense of loss, but also a glimmer of hope. They had forged a bond with humanity, one born of shared sacrifice and the desire to protect the innocent. And though the road ahead would be long and difficult, he knew that they would face it together, united in their common purpose. With a heavy heart, Laros turned away from the viewport, ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. The lessons of the Invictus and the memory of brave young Zorax would stay with him forever, guiding him as he worked to build a better future for his people and for the galaxy as a whole. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.